Detroit Homecoming has been made possible by Urban Science, guiding business through science. Make decisions by what you know, not what you think. And by the William K. Kellogg Foundation, working with communities to create conditions for vulnerable children so they can realize their full potential in school, work, and life.
Helps with the craft.
High school esports.
Yeah.
So this announcement today, $50 million invested.
Yeah, so I started the company last January, and we've raised now over the past 13 months, $96 million. Today we announced the $50 million Series C. Yeah, and so it's led by NEA, which is a top venture fund in the Valley, Battery Ventures. Dick Costello and Adam Bain participated, Michael Ovis, who started CAA. So we have some really great investors. It's certainly a privilege.
So those are some pretty high-profile investors, and that's a lot of money in a short amount of time. I think, so my company, Duo, we raised $119 million. It took us 9 years to do that. That is unbelievable. So when did you see this as the next big thing in gaming? How did you arrive at this idea?
Yeah, so I was always a gamer, even since high school. In fact, in high school, I played in it wasn't called esports at the time, but in a gaming club led by our science teacher, our chemistry teacher specifically. And within that gaming club, I participated in tons of games, and there was trophies on the line, no money, no prize pools. We sort of we participated for respect and glory. And so having that trophy within the school meant something. Back in 2015, 16, I was working on the founding team of Rocket Fiber. So I joined the team pretty early. I was leading strategy and retail. Rocket Fiber is a gigabit ISP. Dan, I believe, is their largest investor. And so I was in the Quicken Loans family of companies. And because most of the esports competitions were online, and obviously Dan has all of this incredible, not only physical space within his portfolio, but he also had this investment in Rocket Fiber. There was an opportunity at least to explore if Detroit could become the sort of home of esports, right? And so our CEO, Mark Hudson, who's an incredible CEO, designated me to be the lead for all of those projects, all of those conversations. I explored them. We evaluated them. We tried to make some bets. At the time, the space was very nascent and immature, as it still is today, but there's been some growth and professionalization. Was really passionate about the space, decided to leave and go join a company, go start a company within the space.
So Delane, this is, how old are you?
I just turned 27.
27 years old. And they say, they say Detroit hustles harder. And this is now not your first rodeo. You've actually been entrepreneurial for some time. Not even 10 years ago, you were selling phones, right, in West Side of Detroit. Tell your story, because you've had an amazing journey to this, including venture capital, including all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, this is certainly different. I like to qualify that. So look, I'm born and raised in Detroit, grew up in the Jeffries Projects, spent some time on 94 and Chalmers, mostly raised, I would say, on the west side of Detroit, on 7 Mile and Burgess, raised by a single mother. It's myself and my older brother with my mother. My brother's father passed away from sickle cell. My father was murdered. And so my mom was 23. She dealt with a lot of trauma. My grandparents raised my brother, a family friend raised me for basically the early part of my childhood. Eventually, I moved back in with my mom, and my mom did something that was really impactful to my career, with just my life in general. She and for her, it was more so about safety. So we lived in a pretty gang-infested neighborhood. She decided to make the decision that when we weren't playing sports, we should get summer jobs. And to stay out of the neighborhood. And so my brother loved to cook. He's now a chef. He works at the restaurant in the Shinola Hotel. And he worked at this meat packing place called Meat Town. And I ended up getting a job at this cell phone store, Sprint Nextel store. And initially it started off like me holding a sign, which is a humbling job, to say the least. And I suck at dancing. I'm a terrible dancer. And so you could imagine how uncoordinated I was trying to twist and turn. And it eventually evolved to me, cleaning the store. And the owner of the store, Sam, really took a liking to me. And he taught me about ownership, the importance of it, especially as a young black man in a city like Detroit. He taught me about work ethic and process and management and people management. And that evolved, those lessons essentially, and the experience I gathered with Sam evolved to me venturing out, doing my own cell phone stores with some partners, Metro PCS stores, a car rental that's still in Detroit and pretty active. And eventually I worked with Tom Lasorda and Dieter Zetch at their venture fund, Inkwell, and then went on to Rocket Fiber and left Rocket Fiber. There was a gap in that period, but then did this.
It's amazing. And even throughout all that, I know, I think my first introduction to you via Amanda Bamboo was around all the work you're doing in the community, helping bring all these speakers here, bring all these founders to Detroit, really boosting and creating the conditions for the success of a broader startup ecosystem, right, than just one company. And so you've always worked to kind of give back, which I think is not only admirable, but I think it's probably been key to your success.
Yeah, and I credit John Treese for that from Ludlow Ventures. He gave me a ticket when I had to be 19 years old to the Launch Festival in San Francisco that Jason Calacanis organized. And the Up To team, which now is mostly StockX, they were also going. And so essentially I piggybacked onto that ticket, went out there, spent time, and essentially learned about tech and entrepreneurship. And this is even around the time where Uber started. And so there was a lot of innovation happening. And it was my first time being outside of Detroit on my own. And it was an incredible experience. I learned a lot, met a lot of people, and it was there where I saw a fireside chat similar to like what we're doing now. And when I got back to Detroit, like Dan hadn't purchased a building really yet. Like he was in the CompuWorld on that 10th level. Him and Josh Linkner had announced Detroit Venture Partners, so there was like some activity, but nothing serious. And so there wasn't really a startup community. But I wanted to build one, and so I started convincing people that I met on that San Francisco trip to come, and also that I follow online, to come to Detroit to speak. And so Brad Feld came, Alexis Ohanian, who started Reddit, came, Charles Adler, started Kickstarter, came, and eventually like those events grew. People started to support them. DVP and Jay Cohen included, Rick DeVos and the Start Garden Wake Stream team as well. And as the events grew, like my love for supporting entrepreneurs grew, and that's how I eventually transitioned into work in venture.
Amazing. So tell us a little bit about the profile of the kids that would participate in esports and what your business does for them.
Yeah, and so first off, like in a pure sense, our business is a software business. So like we're very committed to building out the infrastructure around amateur esports. For us, we've decided to start with high schools. So high schools are go-to-market, and Seasons is our first product within that market. And so the concept of Seasons is that kids can play on behalf of their school with coaching on school campus twice per school year for a state championship as they would basketball and football. And so we unlock that distribution into high schools by partnering with this group called the NFHS, which is the National Federation of State High School Athletic Associations. They're essentially the NCAA for high schools. They write all of the rules for high school sports. They govern all of high school sports, and they've done so parallel to the NCAA for the past 100 years. The reason most people are familiar with the NCAA and not the NFHS is because they don't organize national competitions. So all of the competitions in high school sports stops at the state level. So you become more familiar with your state association than the group that governs them. And so we partnered with them exclusively last January, which is the same month we started the company, for the first time ever in 100 years, where third party owns and operates a high school sport. And so we leveraged that to then introduce this product within high schools the same way as any other sport. And we've had some great success to that. And so we launched our product, we launched Seasons last October in 5 states, quickly expanded to 8 states by the spring. We're now heading into our fall season, so our second school year. And we've had a lot of really good signals. And so the first thing is we've now grown from 8 states to 15 states, including the announcement of California today.
Did you say
15?
15, what?
Yes, so 15. So 15 states. Esports is a sanctioned sport or an activity within 15 states where kids actually earn a varsity letter. They compete for a state championship, which is an amazing accomplishment, frankly. And most sports has taken decades to scale. Cheerleading, it took 30 plus years to get to 43 states. In less than a year of operating, we've scaled esports to 15 states, which is unprecedented in high school sports.
Amazing.
And furthermore, we actually started a wait list at the end of our spring season, which ended in June, to capture some of the demand that we knew that was out there. And we have over 13,000 schools, which represents 68% of the country, signed up to build esports programs through PlayVS. And by comparison, football has about 14,247 schools that participate. So we're 1,000 or so shy of the interest that football has in terms of how many schools want to play in esports at the high school level.
That's amazing. So Dane, I gotta ask a question. This might be a funny one, but I heard that Peter Pham at Science might have told you once, as an investor, and every investor has some kind of pitch themselves, right? And a good line. And for me, when my first investor came and approached us, it was, we invest in movements. And I thought, man, that's really deep, right? This is interesting. I heard his for you was, you can be a millionaire in Detroit, or you can come and be a billionaire in LA.
Yeah.
Explain that.
Yeah, so Peter Pham is an angel investor and one of the co-founders of an incubator and venture fund in Los Angeles called Science. They built Dollar Shave Club with Michael Dubin. They built Dog Vacay, which is now Rover, MeUndies. So lots of massive LA-based startups. And Peter personally has invested, him and his partners have invested in tons of companies in California, or really alongside the coast, that have gone on to sell for billions of dollars. And they've been involved in those companies really early. I met Peter in March of 2017 at South by Southwest, just by happenstance, and we started to talk about esports, and he asked for my number, which I thought was a little weird, by the way. And the next day he called me, and he's like, "Hey, I've been thinking about your idea. You should do it in high school." And at the time I hadn't thought about high school, and he convinced me why I should be thinking about it. And over the next 3 months, basically, I was in Detroit at the time, so I was traveling from Detroit to LA, basically every other week or so, to spend time with his team, really going through an ideation process of what building this company will look like, especially if we tackle high school. And I was dragging my feet because I was very committed to Detroit and growing a business in Detroit. And I also wanted to take some of the lessons I learned from him and apply that and build the company in Detroit. And I'd had conversations with people who probably could have helped me accomplish that. But I don't think anyone really understood esports, the market, the opportunity. And so I wasn't able to really rally the support in the time frame that I had to make that decision. And one day, Peter called me, and the last thing he said to me was that. So he said, "Hey, are you in, are you out?" And, I basically told him I was on the fence, and he's like, "Look, you can be a billionaire in LA, or you can be a millionaire in Detroit." And what he meant by that, at least, my assumption is, look, in LA, it's the biggest sea in the world, next to San Francisco and New York, but there's so much opportunity, and you can build something really fast. And at the time, at least in Detroit, obviously has grown over the past few years in terms of its startup culture. There just wasn't a lot of opportunity. There weren't a lot of places where you could, raise capital. There weren't a lot of startups here. And a lot of the success for companies, especially for people who look like me, just weren't available. And for those who had success, they were within the Quicken Loans family of companies, which is great. And Dan's done an amazing job at rebuilding the city. And certainly, I don't think that this would have happened at this pace had it not been for him pioneering those efforts. But it's difficult to build a big company when you have to rely on one person, and that's just the truth. And so what Peter was saying is that Detroit, LA, that ceiling isn't there, and you're able to navigate that city and build and have success without having to be subjected to whatever politics are associated with, who the billionaires are in town. And to be fair to his credit, in 18 months, we've done something that no black founder has ever done. We've done something that most tech founders have never done. We've raised an A, B, and C in a year, from literally the best cap table in LA. And we've also, dominated our market. And so I don't know if that same opportunity would have been available had I stayed.
Yeah, I hear that. And I think, for us, we had investors that would tell us all the time, coming from California, you can start in Michigan,
but you have to leave, yeah.
But
some
be
of that is
successful.
because they don't want to come to the board meetings, by the way.
That's pretty much it, yeah. They're lazy, but not lazy. But anyway, the insight for us was that actually we didn't necessarily have to be in Silicon Valley, but we did need to build a Silicon Valley in us. And so we did open an office in the San Francisco Bay Area, and ended up, hiring some folks there to help. Do you see any opportunity for yourself in PlayVS here in Detroit? And what do you think that it would take for a city like Detroit to support more businesses like yours?
Sure, yeah, look, I think Detroit is already doing a really great job with tons of great startups. Rocket Fiber continues to grow. StockX is an amazing success. Bloomscape is doing really well. There's a tons of companies here that are finding their way. I forget Brian McKinney's company that does the blight removal, but they're doing really well, obviously, thanks to the work the mayor and his team is doing, providing that opportunity. Look, I think that the landscape's a little bit different, and we certainly could find some success in Detroit. There's probably an opportunity for us to have an office here, especially as costs continue to rise on the coast, and we're starting to look at how we can subsidize our labor and our talent. I'm not exactly sure what that looks like. We haven't explored opening up another office. We're only 41 people right now. But Detroit's certainly a big part of that. The ironic thing, too, is that so many of my executives at my company have Michigan ties, and I actually had no idea until after I hired.
Hey, you got to bring them next year?
So our CTO, Neil, was the VP of engineering at Headspace, helped grow Headspace to $100 million in revenue. He's from Michigan. And our CFO, Gabi, went to Michigan, and he was also the CFO at Zephyr. He helped them scale to a few $100 million in revenue. And so there's tons of people on our team who actually have Michigan ties or are from Michigan. And frankly, there's just some of the most talented people in tech are from Michigan. Yeah. And so, I'd love to be a part of whatever efforts, and this is one of those efforts at bringing people back to Detroit, showing people how Detroit has grown. I'm also in the process personally at looking at purchasing the building downtown Detroit, and some land and helping revitalize the city. Yeah, and just doing my part, right? It's like a 60 or 70,000 square foot building. There's some land next to it, and I think that'd be one step at me, doing my part and making sure that I'm a part of the activation that's happening here.
All right, maybe we'll find some time to talk about that partnership.
Yeah, for sure. I would love to.
So, any advice you would give to this audience of policy makers, investors, movers and shakers for how we can help encourage more, Delane Parnells to happen here? I mean, there's obviously, we can do a lot of work like this to bring executives and other folks back and create opportunities for companies, but if we're trying to help support more entrepreneurs on the ground, what would you say we would need?
Yeah, look, I think we have to empower people who look like me, right? That's the first thing. So, there's all of these large companies downtown Detroit, and I'd ask, how many of the executives, especially the decision-making executives, the check-writing executives, are black, right? Are people of color? And so I think that's a start, right? How many HR executives and leaders are people of color, right? And so I think we have to put people who represent the community, who frankly represent the city of Detroit, in positions of power to bring those people within their network in. We have to invest in training them, and then we have to give them access to opportunities, right? I was really fortunate to have I was really fortunate to have people like Peter Pham and his team at Science and Rick Yang at NEA and really incredible investors and just entrepreneurs who believed in me to give me a shot. But, they were willing to take that risk because they felt like they saw something in me. Like everyone in this room with some sort of authority and influence and check writing ability and door opening ability, like you have to be willing to take that same chance because there's tons of kids who look just like me. The next Delane Parnell is already in Detroit. There's tons of them. And if you want that talent to stay here, then you have to give them a shot. And you also have to give them something to look up to. And so that's why putting those people who look like me in positions where, the people coming up can aspire to be, like you can't get there without that. And so I think that's probably the best route to start. And also too, like the challenge as a black entrepreneur, specifically in tech and in general, is that we struggle with the concept of failure because we don't get another opportunity, right? And so I was hanging out, not to name drop, but like this weekend with Diddy, and someone even within his circle walked up to me and was like, hey, like this is an entrepreneur that's venture backed, they've had some success, not certainly the success that we've had, but they walked up to me and they said, hey, you can't fail. And like that's the pressure basically the external community is putting on me. Imagine the internal pressure that I have, the 41 families that I'm responsible for, and that number continues to grow. And so, but it's true, right? Like there's so few entrepreneurs of color who are capable of attaining the resources through venture capital to grow their businesses. If the one that's at the top, like I'm at the top, if I fail, then it's likely that money stops flowing in that direction. And so we also have to, while we do all of those things I just mentioned, we have to give grace to those people who are in those positions, who make mistakes, who fail. We have to pick them up. You have to treat it like a sports team, right? And I use an analogy, and we have this as one of our core values. It's just teamwork. It's a very simple core value, but what it means for us is that the name on the front of the jersey is more important than the name on the back. Mm-hmm. And in that case, I'd say that the name on the front is Detroit. And if like we're all here to uplift Detroit, if we're all here to uplift Detroit and take Detroit to the next level, then we can't worry about gender or background or economic status or education or pattern matching or if they went to an Ivy League or not. We have to find the most talented people of all backgrounds, and we have to equip them with the resources and the opportunities that they need to do the job. And when they make a mistake, when they fail, we have to give them grace because this is a team sport. Like Detroit doesn't win without everyone on board.
100%. Yeah, at Duo, we talk about, we win or we learn, but we learn together. And, here in the city of Detroit and anywhere, truly, all we have is each other. And so we do have to work to take care of each other, make sure that we find a progress that is equitable. So I couldn't be more proud of you, Delane. I think when we first met, your company was like 5 people.
Yeah, including me.
Yeah, and I can tell. I mean, you wear it proudly, right? Your love for Detroit. I'm so proud of what you've accomplished with your company, and also proud to see your leadership, right? You taking that role and responsibility seriously. There is a burden and responsibility for being first, right, and leading, and you're doing so very admirably. So be proud, but as another great leader once told me, never be satisfied. And we can all be proud of Detroit, but also hopefully never satisfied. And we'll all put in the work. We'll do it together.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Delane.